Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and I have a plugin for you this week. I know usually I have a plugin literally every week, but I've been saddled with a bunch of stuff I'm researching, which has proven to be so audacious and challenging that I missed a week because I was doing a Eurorack module firmware. And I've also been sort of revamping my music type things to some extent, and that doesn't necessarily directly lead to it's not plugins itself, but it's kind of the inspiration for where I get that kind of stuff. So you got to bear with me, or indeed go and listen to those when I do the live streams, because it's always nice to have somebody checking it out. But what I have for a plugin is not in fact a Eurorack module or anything super revolutionary, but it is this. This is Elation. And I'm doing a bunch of, I've put out over 200 plugins if I count correctly. And that's a lot. And that includes some of the heavyweight stuff, like the most recent revision of Tape, which gives you the control over the head bump. And that's really the culmination of a lot of work. Not everything gets to be the most boiled down, finest version of everything, but I have plugins from back in the day that people really would like to see. And so I also have to work on that kind of stuff. And that's what Elation is. Elation was designed as an attempt to do a LA2A, but kind of as a character module, which is the line of plugins that it comes from, rather than, you know, a compressor that compresses. So this is a weird one. This is a compressor that doesn't really compress, or it kind of does. It's got a slightly strange code in it, but it doesn't really compress. And I'll show you that by playing some music through it. So we can play this. And then I turn it on, and it's not really compressing. See, I can turn the drive up. That's not really compressing, as I understand it. And not only that, I don't think that sounds anything like an LA2A either. But being that it is a old Airwindows character plugin with a sound of its own and the same sort of unusual approach to the, I guess at this stage we can call it dynamic convolution, that was the precursor to buzz colors. This is a sound of its own. So you might find uses for it. I'll fool with it a little bit, and then I will shut up and go post it. Again, here we go. If we crank up the personality, we get the usual character plugin thing, which is an unusual, typically a thinning out of the sound is what they seem to do. And again, this is not actually compressing, but it's doing something. So what you could do is, if you use it creatively, push it really hard, then go to dry wet, and maybe introduce a little bit of it. Because if we do it this way, we're basically using it to distort, because it doesn't really compress. It's not a real emulation of anything. It's just a wild experiment from back in the day. If you turn up the personality, it gives this very, very strong tone color, which you could dial back as well, but you can also use the dry wet of it. I think that's actually what it had back in the day too. And what we get is this. You get to kind of lean things out a little bit. and it'll give its own kind of quality. And we can dial back the personality. And when we turn it off, we see that we've turned it into a sort of mid-range mojo tone color kind of craziness. And yeah, what's not to like about that? So yeah, Elation is a free and open source audio unit in VST2, which the VST is for Mac, PC, and Linux. And it is a free plugin. I hope you like it, if this is the kind of thing that you like, because, again, this is not one of the ones to set the world on fire, but if you're looking for something to give a tone color and you're really concerned about trying something that not everybody is going to have or use, then maybe this is right up your alley. The reason I'm still here to do it after having made Elation, 10 years or so ago, or more, and having gone through hundreds of plugins in the interim, and then bringing this back so that you can have it for free, which it used to be. I think this one used to be for sale, hard to tell. It's been a long time. The reason I'm able to do that is that Airwindows is Patreon supported. And the neat thing about Patreon is it lets me put out things like this where you can go like, I don't know, I'll play it again. We can fool with that a little bit, but this is not a plugin that is so well behaved and, you know, obviously a winner for your mix and it's going to make everything sound great. So it would never make it in a commercial context, but I don't have to be in a commercial context because Airwindows is Patreon supported. So a bunch of people got together over the years, because it's taken time for it to build up, and allowed me to basically do whatever, meaning that I don't have to be restricted to what's going to sell on any given week. And in fact, I don't have to be restricted to selling the stuff at all. So go ahead and download it and try it out if you think there's any chance that it'll be useful to you. And this also brings me to other pursuits I get into sometimes. Here, let me step back away from that logic quiz. You don't know where it's been. That's actually the newest form of logic, but I haven't fooled with any of the special features that it's got. I have some concerns about that, in that it seems to be really great at doing all your Ableton Live style looping things, but there was stuff in there that was kind of like, it will automatically time stretch everything that you do to be exactly the thing that will fit with the Apple loops that we include and all that kind of nonsense. I don't like it when they include loops and things. I don't feel like building stuff out of time stretched things that Apple thought up. And that's not my idea of how that kind of stuff is supposed to work. But my concern with leaning on that sort of thing is that everything that you do winds up being automatically time stretched, and I don't know whether it's pitch corrected or not, but that also, the more of that happens by default, the more use of my plugins kind of stops mattering because everything is being processed into a gray paste. So I may end up exploring and finding out if you can do looping and the whole grid interface Ableton Live style thing that the new Logic does now that I'm running it, in a way that preserves actual sample and track information, because it seems like that would be nice, but I don't think they're going to let you do it by default. I think they're going to have everything be just massaged in every imaginable way for convenience purposes. And what I'm looking for is more like play tracks directly off of the hard drive exactly as you got them, and we'll go from there. And whether you can use that in the new forms of recording and producing is worth experimenting with, I guess, in my copious free time, obviously. I do have some more plugins coming. I'm not going to tell you what they are just yet, although some of them are blasts from the past. Namely, I think I'm going to be exploring amp simulator type stuff by first digging up some of the early attempts that I made that were never satisfactory to me, because the only thing that really satisfies me is going into an actual tube amp of whatever kind with all analog stomp boxes. So I'm a little fussy with that kind of stuff, and that's how I get my guitar sounds and things. But I did attempt to make amp plugins back in the day, and I'm going to be bringing those up because people are kind of clamoring for them. And you can always just like this, you can always just throw it on something and see whether it does a useful thing to the sound that you like in the digital domain, whether or not it's a brilliant replication. And one thing I had going on back in the day was that I wasn't trying to do replications of actual amps. Instead, I was just trying to do sort of general concepts of amps. And again, I didn't feel they worked, but you might feel differently. So until then, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.